Hello again, and welcome to In Taiwan We Speak, your audio guide to Taiwan's mind-blowing linguistic diversity. I am Alexander Shin, and today we continue our conversation about Taigi with Phín-tsì, a freelance linguist and Taigi translator. So, I think people know that we're just sitting here recording one whole thing and then cutting it. So I usually don't ask my guests to say hi again like 3 times just to avoid awkwardness in the studio. So many people know you as one of the 3 creators of the Bite-sized Taiwanese podcast. I know it's not being produced anymore, but I think it's a wonderful legacy project that is still out there and people can still find it. So what was that Bite-sized Taiwanese podcast?
So it's a series of podcasts that talk about life in Taiwan, Taiwanese culture a little bit, mostly in English, but we also try to teach some useful phrases, words in Taiwanese and even useful sentences. Yeah, so that's basically the idea. Because back then, I think podcasts were not very, popular in Taiwan, and it was really hard to find in Taiwanese language out there. And Phil was thinking that, maybe we should just, create something in Taiwanese. And he, by the way, Phil, who is the co-founder of this podcast, is a second generation Taiwanese American. He also speaks, Taiwanese with his family, and he had this idea of, trying to just create something in his own heritage language and then share it to, the broader audience. So that was the idea, and we have 50 episodes in total, and there are 3 different series for different levels. So there's wait, let me see. So there's one called Newbie, which is for absolute beginners, and there's another one called I don't even remember the name.
It was a very long time ago. When was the last episode?
I guess 3 years ago. So we have
2020, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so there are 2 different levels, and then we have a series called Pronounce It Like a Pro. So it's all about pronunciation, romanization, script, tones, and tone Sunday. Yeah.
Before you started working with Taiwanese and on Taiwanese, you were a natural sciences student. I think chemistry and biology, if I'm not wrong, right? How did you end up in linguistics?
Yeah, I actually feel a little bit embarrassed talking about it. But, well, everyone has the history. So I've always known I like languages, but it was mostly foreign languages at the beginning. So we all had to study English at school. And later on, I also took Italian and Latin and also tried to learn some other languages through language exchange or self-study while I was at university. And I don't know, I think this passion just grew on me over time, and that was when I realized that maybe I should do something, or maybe I should switch my path and do something related to languages. So I took some linguistic courses from other departments at my university, and also a teacher training program for teaching Mandarin Chinese as a foreign language. So I have to admit that until then, Taiwanese probably never crossed my mind as a cool language, or like a language I would be interested in or took seriously. Yeah, but there were a few things about this Mandarin teacher training program and linguistics that have made me who I am right now. So first of all, it was only until I had to analyze or learn how to teach the language and culture I had been so familiar with that I realized I actually knew very little about it. I guess, I don't know, when you are a native speaker living in the same place for your whole life, you sort of take everything for granted.
Right.
During this journey, I had to sort of rediscover a lot of things about my own language and culture, about who I am, where I'm from, and a really different feeling from learning a foreign language or culture. And that was also when I realized that as a Taiwanese, I really should try to learn more about Taiwan. I realized that I didn't really know much about Taiwan. And roughly the same time, I started to study more about Taigi and Hakka and Formosan languages of the indigenous peoples on this island. So it's a bit funny that the Chinese teacher training program actually made me more interested in Taiwanese. And another thing is that I think as a teacher, a language teacher, you kind of have to become a missionary of some sort and have the responsibility to represent and advocate the language and culture you're teaching. But I actually don't see myself as someone having that strong passion for teaching and representing Chinese.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't know, I actually didn't feel very comfortable, like just, So I discovered something more interesting, which is linguistics. So linguistics, on the other hand, is the science of human language and is more objective. And linguists tend to be more like observers and scientists, which I think probably fits my personality better. So that's why instead of becoming a dedicated Mandarin teacher, I went on to pursue a master's in linguistics in the Netherlands. And then, a few years later, I moved to Toronto, where a lot of overseas Taiwanese live. So I was pretty lucky to be there to get to know people especially from Toronto Taiwanese Language Center. And also I met Dan Lui, the writer of the poem there. And become one of their members. And also while living in Canada, I took some, training and exams in order to become, to work as a translator and interpreter there. So that was the journey, the linguistic journey I embarked on.
But back at home, how much of Taiwanese did you have growing up?
Quite a lot, because my parents speak Taiwanese to each other. My grandma spoke Taiwanese and she had like almost zero Mandarin. And also some of my relatives. So it's like I just grew up hearing and using it. So it's part of the family language. But I have to say that it wasn't anything like important or special if you had asked me this question maybe 10, 15 years ago, because it was just, the language you hear is like the language you use, like it's nothing of any importance.
As you said, you took it for granted.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And with your siblings, do you also converse in Taigi?
Sometimes, but mostly in Mandarin. But now I think I'm speaking more Taiwanese with my brother. Maybe because of, all these changes in my in my life and profession. And also I try to speak as much Taiwanese as possible to my brother's children.
To give the kids sort of an immersive environment.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Several years ago, you mentioned that one of your passions was to figure out how to control which language you use when you're dreaming. Now, I have to ask you, how close did you come to achieving that goal?
Yeah, I think you're referring to my short bio on the Bicep Taiwanese
That's exactly
website,
where I saw it.
On the website. It was actually a bit of a joke, but also partly true, because it's my dream to become fluent in many languages. Apart from maybe a little bit of talent, language learning has a lot to do with discipline and time management, which I wished I could improve on. So that's why I do wish I could practice whatever languages I wanted to learn in my dreams, because I'm just too bad when I'm awake. In real life, I'm using mostly 3 languages, Taiwanese, English, and Mandarin in my everyday life. And I try to practice at the moment Italian and Hakka whenever I have time. But the rest, I don't know. I guess if I manage to control like what languages I use in my dream, maybe I'll have more time to practice.
You'll have 24 hours for that. I think the only dreams-related endeavor I've undertaken was trying to learn how to exit a dream. Because I had a lot of scary dreams, nightmares, and I was trying to figure out. And yeah, to my surprise, I could actually... Well, at least I thought I could control my actions in the dream, and I started jumping under a car to exit the dream, to wake up, but it never worked. The cars would just stop in front of me. Lastly, as someone who educates about Taigi, what would be your message to people who might want to learn this language? You can turn on a mentor in you and just share some of your wisdom, a one-sentence wisdom about what to do and what not to, or what kind of mindset to bring to learning Taiwanese. Or you can write a 10-page essay about this and send it to me, and I'll publish it along with this podcast.
Yeah. I guess you have to love this language. You have to be interested in it. The discipline is still one of the key to success. That's what I feel, because I guess this piece of advice apply to any other language learning, not specifically to learning Taiwanese. I once heard somewhere from other language learners that discipline is more reliable than passion. If you really want to master a language, it's a lifelong journey, I would say. So yeah, but this might sound very overwhelming to most people. If you are not a very hardcore language learner, you can still enjoy the fun of it and just, pick up a few Taiwanese words if you are in Taiwan, or maybe you listen to our podcast and, learn a few useful phrases. Yeah, I would be very happy about that.
Well, that's a very good piece of advice from Phín-tsì. And with that, we're ready to finish this episode. I hope all the language learning procrastinators out there are feeling inspired enough to go ahead and find bite-sized Taiwanese podcasts or Phín-tsi's book online and purchase it and start learning. Thank you, Phín-tsì, for sharing, and everyone else, thank you for tuning in. My name is Oleg, and this was In Taiwan We Speak, your audio guide to Taiwan's mind-blowing linguistic diversity. See you next week.